So if we want to be this future thing, but we don't necessarily have the product there yet, how do we future talk in a way that is setting ourselves up for success for what we know the future product is going to be? And to do that, you can't talk about product specific, right? You have to talk about the possibilities of the future.
Hi, I'm Jason Harris, and you're listening to Soul and Science. Fast forward your marketing mind in about 20 minutes. Welcome back to the pod. Aimee Johnson is a senior marketing executive with over 30 years of experience in consumer packaged goods, retail, and technology, driving innovation, growth, scale, profitability, and most importantly, customer love. As former chief marketing officer at Zillow Group, Aimee was responsible for driving brand experiences, growing national brand awareness, and down-funnel conversions, impactful content, meaningful consumer insights, and integrated campaigns, and marketing at the digitally native real estate company. Prior to Zillow, her robust career experience includes serving as the SVP of Starbucks Digital Experiences and Innovation. Aimee is a customer-centric innovation expert with deep expertise in consumer experience, pioneering digital product launches, strategic branding, and customer loyalty in both growth and turnaround environments. And today's episode theme is "To move is to grow." And I love that theme because, as we know, for people and for brands, there's no growth in comfort. When you're comfortable, you're not growing and you're not changing. So you always have to be looking at what's next. With that in mind, let's dive right in. And before we hit the themes, we're going to find out the Aimee Johnson origin story. Most people kind of ping-pong their way into the career. Some people went to school for it. How did Aimee get into marketing?
Well, at a young age, I told the story before. She's like, my grandma, she is from the Bronx, so we go up and visit her. And she had a little TV set way back in the day when they touched the kid on the back of the head, and that's how the channel changer happened, right? Way back in the day. They'd want to change the channels like on the commercials, right? But I always wanted to watch the commercials, even when I was a little kid. And I was always intrigued by them and what they were saying, etc. I might not even watch the TV shows. And then as I was getting older, I just really liked storytelling. And I really like solving problems. And I really like widgets and gadgets and things. And it turns out there's a career in liking all that stuff called marketing. So I also, which is ironic, I'm on a podcast about science and soul. I didn't like math because I thought math was geometry. And I was always like, why do I have to memorize a proof that had already been proven? Why can't I just use the proof to then create an idea? So I think I don't like math. So anyway, so like marketing is a great career because it's storytelling and it's advertising and it's pictures and it's music and it's solving problems. And there's no math at the time I was in school. But it turns out I love statistics and I love using data to prove things, which to me was never math. And, I wish kids today would know math is more than just, geometry. But so I get into school for marketing. My dad, the engineer, is like, wait a minute, you're going to school for marketing. Don't you learn a craft and then market it? I was like, no. There's a skill called marketing that then you apply to things people create. So I've always kind of known something in the communication, artistic, business case, problem solving space.
I had a similar story. I would always watch the commercials too. And I was like, that seems like someone has to do that for a living. That's pretty cool.
It's fun though, because you look at it and there's so different. Did you ever notice when you were a kid, the onion layers? Because there's the way it looks, there's the way it sounds, there's the thing it communicates, there's the people that are in it. I would break that apart too, because you'd see them so many times, so we're never done.
I always looked at it as, was it a persuasive ad? Did it convince me if I was the audience, or if my mom and dad were the audience, or my sister? Would it convince me or them to want that product, and why? So I broke it down that way. I didn't pull it apart as much maybe as you did. So you left Zillow after 4 years recently, about 4 years, and you were at Starbucks for 14 years. So I kind of like this 14 versus 4 years story. How do you know when digital transformation or transforming a brand is a really long road and when it's a short road? Like just a little comparison between your experience at the 14-year run and the 4-year run.
The 14-year run, I feel like I had many different hats. Like I became an all-rounder, I guess. So I ran tea, I ran beverage, I launched coffee innovation, I was in operations, and then I ended up at digital innovation. So the Starbucks allowed me to be curious in many different places and to learn a lot of different things. So the 14 years has a lot of mini moments in it, if you will. The last 6 years were the digital innovation years specifically. I think the big thing for me is, really understanding how all the different pieces of everything a company does is the brand, and that's never really over, right? As long as a company exists, that's something they have to do. The question is how does then your particular role as the marketer or the product lead or whomever the title is, what then within defining and inspiring employees about what the brand is, then to do their own work in order to make sure that all those brand promises, because really in marketing, you're communicating the promises to customers. Some marketers, in some of my roles, I was also doing the product, right? I created a beverage, therefore then I had to communicate it. Sometimes you just are communicating it. But the product still is solving a problem for a customer. The product is still lining up with an SLA that you've made. And if you're not purposeful about the SLAs you're making, then your brand causes cognitive dissonance with your customers.
Because you start wrong. And then it's impossible to kind of make it right once you start. You have to start with the right thesis to begin with. And so digital transformation is sort of your angle, right? What was the difference in the cultures at those two organizations?
Sure. So at Starbucks, so this was probably 10, 11 years ago. So remembering back then, there wasn't much that companies were doing in regards to digital transformation, right? The tech was still expensive. The data was hard to get. One of the big things that I was trying to do, digital or not, was just to look at the brand and say, okay, what is going on? What are the problems customers have? Da, da, da. And we noticed that after like 7 to 9 people in line in the morning, they ditch the line. They're like, I'm out. And we wouldn't get those sales anywhere else except for like your Manhattan where there's another store like 2 blocks away, what have you. But for most places, we lose the sale, they go somewhere else. There's huge revenue loss. And so the question there is what would then keep those customers happy? Because they're coming to us for a reason. And we knew that we had the loyalty program already digitized, but we didn't have a way for them to activate, it turns out, their order. Like, just get my order placed so I can come in and get it. The biggest hurdle, frankly, at Starbucks was we had a huge debate over Starbucks is democratized. You stand in line. That is the expectation of Starbucks. That is why people are happy. And what I had to convince them is for a certain subset of customers, standing in line does not make you happy. Standing in line stresses you out. Like, yes, there are people where it's their break between their morning home and their work, but there's people who are like, I'm out of here. And then the conversation had to shift to the believability that tech could actually have a heart, that tech can, the mission for Starbucks is to inspire and nurture the human spirit, right? 1 cup at a time. And how do you do that on tech? Oh my God. So then what I did is I had to pivot the conversation and keep the customer needs. I had to pivot the conversation to, well, we're just really actually amplifying an experience. We're not creating a tech platform. They're not two separate things. You cannot have an operational unit that is separate for a tech environment in a physical space. Like, it just is not possible, and customers would get confused. So then once I convinced them kind of that you can amplify the customer experience through tech, then I had to demonstrate how you can actually do that. And then once we kind of show that, oh my God, customers are happy. Oh my God, they just need a high thank you at the handoff point. Oh my gosh, it's tripling their revenue because they're now happy. once you started demonstrating that, then it got easier. It got easier for the funding. It got easier for those kind of things. Very different than Zillow. Zillow's product, they think, is like, and which it is, it's a website. It's very different, but the underlying assumptions are actually quite similar.
I love that because I think in both those examples, I love tech can have a heart. I think that's a good headline and a takeaway. And I think the idea is in both of in that situation, and I think we'll talk about Zillow a bit too. It is all about the core audience, and the audience doesn't always want the same things. So even people that are on the platform, they know they can do mobile orders. They know they can just go in and pick it up. They want that inline experience, right? They want to go in and have it take longer, you know, give them their name, they want that sort of touch point, even though they can do it a different way. And then some people want as frictionless as possible. They just want the Starbucks product. So I think that's really interesting when you frame it in, the customer experience and amplifying the customer experience. You can't really lose because there's no argument there because not everyone wants the same thing, but they want the same brand. They want the same end product, but they don't want it to get it the same way. So I think that's really insightful. And then when you're thinking about Zillow, do you have some any story or product innovation or something that happened at Zillow that was transformative?
Where Starbucks are used to a journey because there's a physical journey and you walk in and talk to a barista and you can sit there and hear it and feel all of the goods that the customer yummies and the employee interactions and stuff. Zillow is much more like there's not a customer journey because people are popping in and out of your asset all the time. And so you're not just a cookie that's 30 days stored. You are Jason. And it is okay to say, hey, Jason, is it okay if we know you a little bit better? How do we start having that conversation with you so you feel the appropriate way that the brand Zillow should feel with you? How do you investigate mortgages the way you dream about houses? Right? Like, how do you take what we're known for into a space that allows us to differentiate why Zillow should be on mortgage? What's the SLAs that make sense for us? So that's all the infrastructure. So while I didn't have product. Well, I was mainly into communication and let's look at, I would also help with like, what's the strategy? What are we trying to do? What are the big customer problems we're trying to solve? Okay, now how do we tie all those products into the strategy so that when we're saying something to customers, it's like a ta-da and it's a communication and it's meaningful to people that are coming to your site.
Was it hard? Is it hard as a CMO when you have all these different there's different groups that have different profit goals and different P&Ls, and to try to figure out how to not worry about those P&Ls because all that matters is the customer experience, but each individual person responsible for those P&Ls wants their thing, and maybe they're coming to marketing to push their thing. How do you have any techniques or ways that you get people around a table or around Zoom and say, hey, this is what's best for the company or what's best for the customer?
Yeah, I have a Starbucks example and I have a Zillow example. At Starbucks, when we were launching the personalization engine, so we sell beverages to you. You walk in, you see a menu. There is somebody that owns the different P&Ls. Like somebody owned Frappuccino, somebody owned the floor, right? Somebody, right? So you can imagine, like, I want my font bigger. You have, but with the personalization engine, it kind of starts knowing you, and it's like, wow, you drink a lot of brewed coffee, but you've never eaten anything. And we know that if you have a bagel with the brewed coffee, that's the best attach. And we know that if you offer you something 3 times, the probability of you ordering now a larger ticket item with a bagel and a coffee is good. It's good for you. It's good for us. But in that communication, I can't also say like, have a bagel and also have a Frappuccino and come back in the afternoon and do this, right? So what we had to convince the P&L owners there were that, look, you're going to have like 80% of the people coming in are naturally going to fall to products. They're going to know what they want. They're going to The other 20%, what we're trying to do is figure out what's best for the customer so they order more of that. So I'm not going to offer Jason Frappuccino if he's never ordered a sweet drink at our store before. Like, that's kind of silly if there's 4 other things we could offer Jason based on his past purchase behavior. And we could test our way in. Maybe he's just never bought sugary drinks with us before and goes to 7-Eleven for them. I don't know that. So maybe we could test it somewhere. But if you're thinking about what you want to do to drive revenue, at least what we felt, is you don't go against habits, you go into habits. And then once you've saturated that habit that people have, then what's the next most likely habit that you can introduce yourself into? At Zillow, I would say one of the mistakes I made coming into Zillow was, listening, like, here's the mandate and here's the thing you need to do. And you need to come in and you need to be the CMO. We haven't really had a quote unquote real CMO. We had a communication CMO before, and she was great. And we had a person that was in product before, and he was great. But like, you're bringing a new skill set, so come in and like manage that skill set. So I did come in and be like, good, I'm a marketer. Let's go market things and talk about stuff. And I came in a little more like from the frame of reference, like everybody knew what it was that I was supposed to do and my skill and all that. And it really took me a good 6 months before I was like, they don't know what marketing is. They know what their marketing is, but they don't know what my marketing is. And oh my God, the PMs think they're marketers because they're doing an A/B test on pricing, but that's not the same as pricing strategy.
You can't just drive a business through acquisition and data and numbers. That's part of it. That's short term, right? You can go quarter to quarter, maybe make your shareholders happy. But you also have to play the longer game where we're building a great brand, and great brands take time to build, but they also survive. They outlast other brands because you've spent the energy and resources to build the brand, which is the emotional component, which is the heart piece. You can't just be led by data and just look at clicks and numbers over and over, because that performance is important, but it's not the whole enchilada. And so how do you come in at a tech company? How do you get this campaign off the ground, knowing that you have to connect with the customer on a higher level?
So as we're figuring everything out, and we want to change from the Zillow that is just dream with us to find reality with us. We had to understand, wow, like, what does that mean? Like, how do we take the goodness of the dream part and apply it to the future of getting a mortgage, apply it to the future of closing your loan on time, apply it to understanding financial services, etc. So as we're figuring all this out, what we did is we went to Google's headquarters, and I forget the big building. There's a building, you walk up the stairs, and they have this room, and there's monitors from the floor to the ceiling. And they put up Zillow, they put up our competitive set on all the walls. And literally, like, we were the blue ones, they were the red ones, somebody else were the white ones, and somebody else was also white. So it's like everything looked the same. There were beautiful pictures of houses. One of them had agents in it because they're an agent brands. If you took the brands off, you kind of wouldn't know who's who. And it was a interesting moment where, like, we're not differentiated. Like, on our product, we are ish, but the communications are all like, come into your house. Military dad comes home and the spouse is there with the kid and they cry and yay, Zillow for finding us your house. And that was great. And it was emotional. It was awesome work. And everybody else started copying us. It was time to do something different. And then we had to figure out, okay, so if we want to be this future thing, but we don't necessarily have the product there yet, how do we future talk in a way that is setting ourselves up for success for what we know the future product is going to be? And to do that, you can't talk about product specific, right? You have to talk about the possibilities of the future. You have to talk, because we're about possibilities, right? We're about dreaming. We're like, you may not buy that $15 million mansion, because hardly anybody does, but that $250,000 house that you're going to end up buying because you were futzing around, you know what you want in your kitchen and you know what you want the bedroom to look like and all that kind of stuff. We're going to help you with that too. And it's okay. And we're not judgy and it's great. And how do we move you into that space of possibilities? And so the idea was understanding what the roadmap and it looks like over the next 3 years. How do we start being in today and in service to today and demonstrating then the tomorrow? You end up in an emotion space. You have to be in an emotion space because you don't want to keep talking about the product. Like, everybody has the same thing. Come to our site, put a zip code in, blah, blah, blah. So then the pandemic hit. And I was like, the world came to a screeching halt, we thought, oh my God, no one's going to be on our site anymore because who's going to want to look for houses because no one wants to be next to another person. So the world was, it ends. So to move is to grow is like, we're scared. It's okay. You can't just be scared. And when we talk to people, customers, we kept hearing, oh my God, the move is so scary. The move is so scary. But once I moved, it was so worth it. It was so worth it, right? So we kept hearing that, like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I'm so scared. Da, da, da. Oh, the moving process is horrible. Oh my God, my loan didn't come through. Oh my God, this closing thing didn't happen. And then, like, it's almost, I don't know, it's like having a baby. You forget the first 6 months because you're just like, yeah, now I can have another one because I forgot that. Having a house is the same. It's like, oh my God, this is great. I found myself. And the stories we would hear from employees and customers, like a gentleman who came out to his parents, and because we said each house is like a chapter of your life. And where we got there was like talking talking to people, focus groups on Zoom, and employees. And one of the employees in one of these sessions said, I came out to my parents and they did not accept me. And then I moved to San Francisco and I found my family. And that house, that address has like meaning to me in a way that it defines me. And that's the kind of language we were hearing, regardless of if it's sad because somebody died or happy because you were having another baby or what have you. So how do you then take that energy of to move is to grow to the positive side, to not the like, because all the ads still were like, click here or do this thing, da da da. And that's how we ended up with to move is
I
to
think
grow.
it's so powerful. And it's something that can endure and last a long time, I think, for the brand. And when you think about going into that tech company, so to speak, do you lean more soul or science? Do you lean more, emotion driven work or more data driven work? Obviously, it's both, but do you, as a marketer, do you lean on one side or the other?
I lean more intuition and asterisk. I think the intuition and the soul, though, is grounded in some type of insight or hypothesis. And then from the hypothesis or insight, you get more information. I guess to say in brain science is what your analytical, structural, conceptual, and relational. And you could be one part or whole brain that way. And when you have somebody that leans analytical, like the number is the fact, and it's so the fact, and it's so the thing that makes you right or wrong. It's hard to debate that because like people don't have chips in their head. And somehow with the folks that think this way, you have to say, well, is this like a two-way door decision or a one-way door decision? And can we just take a step forward? Like, what's the worst that can happen if you take a step forward? Again, it's all about what's your measurement? Are you setting it up the right way? And then if the answer comes out, then we have to agree to it. You can't be looking to always get your way, even when the data comes back saying that you're been disproven.
Through our research, we know you love Brene Brown. What is there anything that she's taught you or that you've learned that you bring to your leadership style?
Sure. I think two things. One is I'm going to go again back in the time warp here. Way back when she first started all the vulnerability stuff, which now seems like, of course, that was new. It was new. Be vulnerable. And at Starbucks, it's probably different than many companies because there's lots of meetings where there's crying and laughter and hugs and the kind of stuff you see in the stores, right? You see at corporate. So being vulnerable. I came from CPG where if you didn't hold your shit together, you were not taken seriously, right? You show up a certain way, you sit in a certain place around the table, you talk when you talk, you're running a thing there's a way in which it works, right? And I had to undo that and be like, it's okay to be personal. It's okay to hug. It's okay to say, you know what, this thick binder I have right here, I actually don't have that answer. And I have to go get that, right? So that was a big learning for me. And to hear her say it with such elegance, it was just beautiful. And to see men and women of different backgrounds react to her, that was the power for me. It wasn't just her saying it so eloquently and it resonating with me. It was the fact that it resonated with so many people that it must be true. The other, she has this fantastic workbook that Dare to Lead workbook that accompanies the book. The book is good, but the workbook, I'm like, okay, let's go back through the values page. Okay, everybody, we're going to do this exercise. What are your top 3 values? Let's go and cut down. Like, there's just so many things in that workbook that I go back to over and over again.
I'm a big believer in vulnerability and values as well. You can't without those values, it's hard to know what to do in different situations unless you have those actually written down and you understand them fully. Yes. And you can communicate them. Does Aimee have a favorite mantra or quote?
This is my favorite quote because I think it summarizes actually your mantra in a way. It's an Albert Einstein quote. And it's the true science of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. Like, you need the imagination, you need the creative problem solving, you need to have joy in fixing things. And I just really love it because it doesn't dismiss data, it doesn't dismiss numbers, it doesn't dismiss anything. It just says to sit in what's possible.
Right. And it's coming from scientists, right? So it's coming from science.
I know,
that's
great.
Just so powerful about it. Yeah. Do you have any role models that you have influenced you in your life or career?
Oh my gosh, I don't know, so many. My dad is, he's a big role model for me. In high school, I'd kind of been, I don't want to say bored and beaten down both. Like, oh, you don't raise your hand enough, or oh, you don't quite know the answer, or like you don't read as fast as everybody else. Whatever. I knew I was different in some way in school. And the guidance counselor took me aside in junior year, and he's like, well, you probably should just apply to community colleges because you're probably not going to get in anywhere else. I went home. I told my dad, like, oh, I can't apply to college. And he's like, well, why? And I said, well, the guidance counselor said I'm not going to get in. And he was like, bullshit, you're not going to get in. He goes, we're going to sit down right now and we're going to go through all the schools and we're going to apply to them. And he's like, you don't take that. Like, you don't take when someone's trying to tell you you're not worth your space. And I always thought that was amazing.
Hats off to Dad. All right, final question. What's your Starbucks order?
Of course, I can't have one Starbucks order. I worked there for 14 years. So my everyday order is a grande flat white. So that's pretty easy. My favorite drink, I have to say, comes in the fall. And it's a grande nitro, cold brew, sweet cream with 2 pumps of pumpkin spice and nutmeg sprinkled on top.
Amazing. I've had that drink without the pumpkin spice or nutmeg, so I might try that. Aimee, this has been amazing. Thank you for being open and sharing so much wisdom with us. I think we learned a lot about tech having a heart, creating magical moments for customers, going into organizations with active listening and curiosity, listening for the gold, ability to be vulnerable. Love that imagination isn't just science idea. I think that's perfect for this audience. And then from Dad, really don't listen to anyone's bullshit. Everyone should take that advice, I think. So it was great. And thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. And please keep sharing the fact you can have a soul, you can have a heart, and you can have a head, and the two can work together.
You absolutely need both. Soul and Science is a Mechanism podcast produced by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, Tyler Nielsen, Emma Swanson, and Lily Jablonski. The show is edited by Daniel Ferreira with theme music by Kyle Merritt. And I'm your host, Jason Harris.